Welcome, action movie aficionados. It's Jack, and we're about to embark on an epic journey through In Hell, released in 1976. Hold on to your seats because this video contains explosive spoilers. Get ready, and let's jump into the heart-pounding action. An American expatriate, Kyle LeBlanc, finds employment at a steel mill in Magnitogorsk, Russia. After his wife expresses dissatisfaction with the time he dedicates to their relationship, he plans a visit during his upcoming vacation. While driving home, Kyle calls his wife to share the news of his visit but instead hears her screams as a man named Sergio Kovac abuses her, ultimately resorting to violence when she resists. Kyle rushes home to protect her but tragically discovers her lifeless body as Kovac flees. In pursuit of justice, Kyle apprehends Kovac, and both are taken to the police station. However, Kovac employs his connections to manipulate the legal system, leading to his acquittal due to a lack of evidence. Fueled by anger and a sense of injustice, Kyle steals a firearm from a guard and takes matters into his own hands, fatally shooting Kovac within the courthouse. Consequently, he receives a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Kyle is incarcerated at Kravai prison, where the prison's warden, General Ryskov, sets a brutal example by punishing an inmate in front of newcomers, warning them of potential consequences for escape attempts. During intake, Kyle faces a violent encounter with an officer, Lieutenant Tolik, who forcibly removes his wedding ring. Later, another American inmate named Billy Cooper is subjected to a horrifying ordeal involving assault and abuse at the hands of a gangster named Andre, who has bribed corrupt officers. As Kyle grapples with traumatic memories of his late wife, he initiates a hunger strike and even attempts suicide but ultimately decides to survive, prompting him to resume eating. He is eventually transferred to a cell alongside an inmate known as 451, who has a reputation for causing harm to previous cellmates. Kyle receives a visit from his brother-in-law, who offers assistance in securing his release in exchange for bribing the guards to improve his prison life. In the prison yard, Kyle encounters Billy, who reveals his sentence for drug-related reckless driving at a restaurant collision. While conversing, another inmate named Malachi, who is confined to a wheelchair, joins them and provides insight into the inner workings of Kravai. Malachi exposes Andrei's involvement with the Russian mafia, his influence over the guards, and his leadership of a prison gang. He extends an offer to assist Kyle and Billy when needed. Kyle's attempts to adapt to prison life are marred by Andrei's relentless teasing and provocation. After an unsettling encounter with his cellmate, 451, Kyle bribes a guard to request a cell change. However, he must wait or potentially increase the bribe to expedite the process. A significant prison fight, organized by General Ryskov for gambling purposes, unfolds. Kyle inquires if his cellmate, 451, partakes in these fights but learns that he had declined to participate long ago. Despite disapproval from the prison staff, they cannot penalize 451's decision, as it serves their financial interests by allowing them to relocate other inmates to his cell. After a few days, Billy finds himself once more in Andrei's cell, where he attempts to retaliate but ends up being attacked again, necessitating another trip to the infirmary. Meanwhile, while working alongside fellow inmates, Kyle unintentionally offends some gang members, resulting in a brutal beating sanctioned by an officer who believes Kyle disrespected the gang. Consequently, Kyle is relocated back to solitary confinement. In solitary, Kyle becomes aware of another inmate in the adjacent cell and tries to communicate through the wall. As time passes, the relentless cruelty and violence within the prison deeply affect him, with gangs initiating conflicts and even taking lives over minor disputes. During a work assignment, a mine explosion incapacitates the guards, prompting Billy to exploit the situation and make an escape attempt with another inmate. However, their bid for freedom ends in tragedy, as the other inmate is shot, and Billy is returned to prison. Meanwhile, Kyle continues to adapt to life in solitary confinement and begins a journey of self-improvement, focusing on building his physical and mental strength. However, his transformation alarms his well-wishers, Malachi and Billy, who become increasingly concerned about his violent behavior. As Kyle's winning streak in the brutal fights continues, resulting in the deaths of his opponents, the situation becomes alarming for Malachi and Billy. They worry about his drastic change in behavior and its consequences. During one of his visits, Kyle's brother-in-law attempts to secure his release, but Kyle discourages his efforts, believing that nothing will change and wishing to avoid false hope. As Russian Independence Day celebrations approach, Malachi encourages Billy to escape but betrays his plan to the guards in exchange for medication. After enduring torture by the officers, Billy is transferred to a new cell, where he meets a new inmate, Valya. Tragically, Valya subjects Billy to rape and torture, ultimately leading to his death after Billy spits on his face. Kyle discovers the severely wounded Billy in the cell and rushes to his aid, but it's too late. Before passing away, Billy imparts a powerful piece of advice to Kyle: don't let them turn you into something you are not. Just like many others who have suffered at the hands of Crab-Eye's horrors, Billy's life ends silently, with his body buried without informing anyone. Moved by Billy's wisdom, Kyle takes a stand for himself and refuses to engage in further fights. As punishment for his defiance, he is hanged outside for all to witness. Kyle faces the harsh weather conditions but refuses to give in to the corrupt games played by the prison authorities. Meanwhile, inmate 451 learns of Malachi's betrayal of Billy and decides to enact his form of punishment. He douses Malachi in a flammable liquid and sets him on fire, a grim reminder of the abuse he endured in his past and the vengeance he exacted, much like what he does to Malachi. Inspired by Kyle's resilience and courage, other inmates follow suit and decide to stand up for themselves. Rival gangs put aside their differences and unite, refusing to fight each other. The officers find themselves powerless as they cannot punish them all. This frustrates General Ryskov and his fellow officers, who used to profit from gambling on the fights. Holding Kyle responsible for inciting rebellion, they plan to eliminate him to restore order. Kyle is removed from confinement and placed in the infirmary, where he recalls his wife, Grace, expressing her joy at his return. In their conversation, she reminds him that nobody is ever gone as long as there is someone to remember them. Enraged by Kyle's actions, Lieutenant Tillich introduces the most dangerous prisoner, Milik, and forces him to fight against Kyle. During the fight, Kyle resorts to banging on the wall, just as he did in solitary confinement. This signals Milik, as Kyle was the only one who ever tried to communicate with him. The fight is immediately halted, and a bond forms between Kyle and Milik. The situation frustrates Lieutenant Tillich, who points a gun at them, demanding they fight. Instead, Kyle and Milik turn the tables and attack the officer. This sparks a riot, with the prisoners protesting against the guards and breaking out of their cells. The officer shoots Milik multiple times, but Milik still manages to take him down. As the inmates wreak havoc, Kyle attempts to comfort the dying Milik, who succumbs to his injuries. Soon, the guards manage to regain control of the situation by calling in additional reinforcements, prompting the prisoners to retreat to their cells. Kyle and his cellmate sit there, feeling disheartened. Kyle confides in his cellmate about his wife's murder and reveals that when he lost himself, he lost her as well. He's determined not to repeat the same mistake this time. Witnessing Kyle's frustration, 451 offers a way out and informs him about his escape plan. Upon their return to their cell, 451 hands Kyle some documents containing evidence of all the murders and corruption that have occurred in the prison over the last 20 years. He explains that their plan involves one final fight. Despite his reluctance, Kyle agrees, realizing it's his only chance to escape. As Kyle reluctantly prepares for another fight, General Ryskov sees it as an opportunity to eliminate him once and for all. The following day, Kyle engages in another intense fight, this time against Valya, and manages to dislocate Valya's shoulder. In retaliation, Valya tries to stab Kyle with a pocket knife, but it accidentally strikes another gang leader. Kyle then defeats Valya, smashing him against a pole, and dedicating his victory to Billy. As 451 had warned him, the officers planned to take Kyle out of the prison to execute him. Simultaneously, 451 sneaks into the garage through a secret passage and attacks the guards to rescue Kyle. After obtaining the keys from a guard and unlocking Kyle's handcuffs, Kyle reclaims his wedding ring and crushes the guard with a car. Following 451's advice, he changes into the guard's uniform and invites the guard to join him, but the guard refuses, handing over the documents and requesting that Kyle ensure the world learns about the atrocities in the prison. Kyle takes the guard's car and prepares to leave, while 451 returns to the general's office and exacts revenge on him for his misdeeds. The guards soon discover 451 and return him to his cell, while Kyle successfully escapes. Upon his return to the United States, Kyle published the documents, ultimately leading to the closure of Crab-Eye prison 3 months later.